Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts and other stuff they've been involved in. My guest today is a fourth dan in Kyokushinkai Karate and is a highly respected and accomplished martial artist with extensive experience in various backgrounds. Born and raised in New York City, his passion for martial arts ignited at a young age, starting with Kung Fu and Taekwondo. Under the guidance of his dedicated instructors, his natural talent quickly became evident. His lifelong commitment to martial arts has made him a true exemplar in the warrior spirit. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Duval Hamilton. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm very good. Thank you for having me today on your show.
Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. And I know how busy people are, and I love when they take time to do this. So I truly appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Well, I mentioned you started at a young age. What we like to do with our guest, I want to go back to the very beginning. I want to know where and how it started, where that first interest came from, that first spark that kicked off your martial arts journey.
Right. So I'm a 70s baby. And so I often tell people that definitely that interest came in watching Bruce Lee movies.
Nice.
And those old Shaw Brother movies. And that was really the spark of the interest. But of course, growing up in New York City in the 70s, and people think that now New York City is bad. New York City was really bad back in the 70s and 80s. And, wanting to learn how to protect myself while walking the streets in New York. Now, granted, I was a kid, and most kids that live close proximity to their school would either walk to school or either have their parents drop them off. Well, my parents worked, so my sister and I, we had to walk to school. So, of course, there's always a threat of school bullies as well as, predators on the outside. So, but I wasn't really thinking on that level. I was just thinking, hey, this guy, Bruce Lee, he's really good. He's protecting of himself and his family and his friends. I want to learn something like that. So that was really the motivation for me to start martial arts.
Okay. And then what age before you actually got to do it? Like how long after that first interest was it pretty quick where you got convinced your parents to let you do it, or did it take a little while?
I think it was fairly quick. And the reason why it was because I grew up in the projects, and we had a community center where they had after school activities. And one of the activities that was after school was a guy, I can't even remember his name, but I just knew it was this gentleman that was teaching Kung Fu classes.
Okay.
So if you're talking about in terms of the 70s, Kung Fu was the popular art.
Yep.
And so he was teaching Kung Fu classes. And when my friends introduced me to the Sifu, I'm like, oh, I have to let my parents know about this. And
nice.
And so, I took a couple of classes, and it was very interesting because I didn't have any martial arts experience. I was just so much engulfed into the film side of it. I just didn't have enough experience to know what was real, what was not, what was fake, what was not. But I just kind of had a feeling that it wasn't enough for me.
Okay.
It wasn't enough. I kind of, maybe because I was looking on the outside appearance of the community center and cornered off into one section of the basketball court or whatever the case may be. I had mentioned to I clearly remember mentioning to my mother that I wanted to go to a real martial arts school, right?
Okay.
And so there used to be a section of Queens in Long Island City, Queens, called Steinway Street, where it was a very long street with a mom and pop stores on both sides, and the Woolworths, and there was probably the biggest department store on that street. And my mom used to go there every Saturday to shop. Used to take us to shop to go on Steinway Street. That was an excitement for us on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were, just like any other Saturday, traveling down or walking down Steinway Street, I just happened to look up on the second floor and I see something that's read Taekwondo. And I was like, Taekwondo? Wait a minute, that's martial arts.
Hmm.
So I urged my mom to run me upstairs so we could see. And at that moment, that was it for me. I mean, when I walked into the place, it was wood floors, a punching bag, it had, kicking pads on the side, and a class was going on. Students in white uniforms and color belts, and they were screaming and yelling. And I was like, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to sign me up. And at that moment, she did. He did. So that kind of started my Taekwondo career.
Okay.
So, yes.
What age was that?
This was, I would say now we're going into the very late 70s, going into the early 80s. So I would say somewhere in the age of 11 or 12, somewhere in that area. Yes.
Do you remember your very first class? And if so, just what are some of the memories from that?
Oh my goodness. It was like a dream come true. The very first class, as my mom going into the office with the head instructor and signing up for classes. And I clearly remember him going to the side and taking out like a membership card and him filling out my name and my mom's phone number on the membership card and actually signing off on the membership card with the date, because back then every time you come to class, you had to drop off your membership card. And then when you leave class, you have to go pick it up because you have to get signed off.
Oh, wow.
And I remember the biggest thing was almost like Christmas when he literally took a uniform from the back and he handed it to my mother. That was the biggest thing for me because I knew for sure I was in the right place at that moment, But it was an amazing for a kid who loved Bruce Lee, loved Kung Fu movies, and then that spark for loving martial arts. It was a huge thing for me. And like I said, it was better than Christmas.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. So, how long did you stay at that school?
So, for that moment, I remember reaching a green belt level. So that means I might have, from my memory, at least maybe 2 years there.
Okay.
2 years there. And then from that moment, I think, and I can't really recall, but I think the instructor started raising the fees. And at that moment, mom could really pay for the extra, additional fees that were that we had. So I ended up going to another Taekwondo school.
Okay.
And which were at that time they were charging $35 a month. For class.
That's a lot back then, actually.
Yeah, it was. I'm so thankful that my parents noticed the eagerness for me to learn martial arts, that they would sacrifice that extra money for me to go and train in classes. And I just clearly remember her dropping me off. We go do what she do, shopping, her and my sister, and then they're coming back to pick me up in an hour for classes. So so classes were about $35 back then. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember my first Tung Sudo school in 1984. If I remember correctly, it was either $15 or $20 a month.
Wow.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And even that was tough for my parents to afford back then. So. But,
right.
That's crazy. So now, did you get involved into the competition side back then, or did that come later?
So back then, I did not get involved in competition side because a lot of the tournaments were on Sundays.
Okay.
And because I grew up in a very religious household, that was not going to happen for me at all. So the tournaments did not come until very late for me. Okay. And I think I kind of missed out on opportunities in competing and gaining a lot more reputation on the competition side. But overall, I think all things are good, done for the good. So yes, wow. I didn't. So early on, I did not get an opportunity to train. I'll do the competition.
And how long did you stay at that second Taekwondo school?
So the second Taekwondo school, I literally stayed probably another 2 years. So I was able to obtain my brown belt at that moment.
Okay.
And this was, I would say, somewhere in the area of ages Probably 15, 16, 17, somewhere in that area. And then I had a moment of where I just completely stopped martial arts.
Okay.
And I think because I was going to a high school, I was going to a specialized high school in New York, and I was trying to involve myself in a lot of the school activities there. And, as a kid, you want to do everything.
Yeah.
You want to be part of the basketball team. You want to be part of the flying club. You want to be part of martial arts. You want to be, and there's just not enough time in the world. So I got myself involved in junior ROTC, which took up a lot of my time.
Okay.
And I kind of like that tail end of the high school era of my time. I kind of dropped off a little bit, but I always still had that passion and that love for it.
Okay. So one quick question with that second Taekwondo school now, did they allow you to keep your green belt or did you have to start over?
They did. They did. Interesting enough, they did, because the first Taekwondo school was operated and run by the name of a gentleman by the name of Moon Sun Lee, which I believe he was one of the top Taekwondo instructors on the Northeast. I don't know about the U.S., but definitely in New York. And so when they recognized the certificates that I brought over to this other school, they basically allowed me to keep my rank. And so the second gentleman who I trained under, his name was Tony Lupakis. And this guy, he was from Greece. He was into martial arts, but his thing was he was a gymnastics. He was a gymnast. And he was also a legend, especially in the Greek community. He had two sons that were very, very good competitors in the tournament scene. They were very good competitors. So, yeah, they did allow me to keep my rank at that time.
Yeah, I actually just Googled that name, Tony Lupakis, and it came up. So just cool.
Yes. Tony Lupakis. He was an amazing instructor. I mean, he was very, very, very good.
Yeah, it looks like he was world renowned also as a Greco-Roman wrestler too. So
yes, he was. Yeah. He was very strong guy. I mean, he's a really short guy, but he was very flexible. He's a gymnast, so I mean, unbelievable strength, unbelievable talent, and he's just a really good guy.
And what's sad is now, if he would have been teaching today versus back then, he would have probably incorporated the wrestling into the Taekwondo. But back then they weren't really doing that.
No, they weren't really doing that. I mean, the lines were just bold, right? Yeah. Taekwondo, karate, and jiu-jitsu. Brazilian jiu-jitsu wasn't even talked about, especially in the U.S. Not that much back not in the 70s, or late 70s. So. Yeah.
So do you remember what, because I have a background in traditional Taekwondo, do you remember like which Kwon that was under, like which forms you guys practiced?
Oh, I remember one of my favorite forms was Wanyo.
Okay, yeah, that's not one of ours. Must be a different organization then. Okay.
So that it was a different organization, but here's the kicker. So that period of time where I kind of like stopped and then I kind of picked it back up in my 1920, this is my college years. I kind of picked up the Taekwondo thing back again.
Okay.
And I studied under S. Henry Cho. Oh, now he is world renowned in the spaces. And as a matter of fact, he produced a tournament or two at Madison Square Garden. And so I trained under S. Henry Cho. Now, S. Henry Cho, he taught a style or version of Taekwondo called Kwon. And so here's the thing. The funny thing about it is the Kwon style, it was more similar to the Shotokan style. Okay. Because they use the katas that they use were at least the first 5 to 7 katas are similar to the Heian katas in Shotokan karate.
Nice.
They call them Pian katas.
Yep.
And which is the same style of katas that we use in Kyokushin Karate.
Okay.
So it was more, and I don't know the deep history of Taekwondo, but I think it was more towards the Japanese side of Taekwondo.
Okay.
It kind of took that leg. So, yes.
Yeah, and I just looked it up.
Yeah.
He did his tournament at Madison Square Garden 23 consecutive years.
23 years. And I believe Bruce Lee attended one of those. Within one of those.
It says that was the first tournament Bruce Lee met Chuck Norris at the All-American Open.
So just imagine back then you're hosting tournaments at Madison Square Garden.
That's crazy.
Today, most of these tournaments are like your local high school. It wasn't a lot of tournaments like a lot of major tournaments like that.
Yep.
And so either S. Henry Cho had a lot of clout, a lot of money, because it's a lot of money to host a tournament, even on a small scale at a high
Yes.
school or
Yes, it
college,
is.
right? Yes. So
Yeah, my instructor just had his local tournament in Fargo this past weekend, and we had
right.
191 competitors for a local tournament, which
That's
it's
nice.
actually the biggest one we've had in a long time. So
That's actually very nice to have
yeah,
191 competitors.
yeah,
That's very, very nice. That's a
yeah,
nice sized tournament.
that was pretty
From
good.
what I heard, that when you produce tournaments, you kind of don't really make money off of them. You
You break
kind
even,
of bring people
hopefully.
together. Yes, hopefully.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And then you said you got back into it in college then with S. Henry Cho. How long did you stay with him?
So again, so with S. Henry Cho, since I've been out of it so for so long, it was like a reset
Okay.
for me. So I stayed all the way up until brown belt at that moment. And then from that moment, it seemed like I was just looking for something deeper. I'm not really sure, or I was just looking for something a little bit addition to what I was doing. And I ended up connecting myself to a group in New York City by the gentleman by the name of Moses Powell.
Oh, yes.
And
Wow.
he taught a style called Sunukisru. And not that I wasn't happy with the traditional Taekwondo, traditional Japanese style. I just wanted something a little bit more, like almost a obvious self-defense component to it.
Yeah.
And Sunukisru definitely bought that for me. And I spent just a mere 3 years there. I just clearly remember I used to work in the area, and I used to get private lessons directly from Moses Powell on my lunch hour.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember that when I first met him, I was like, "Oh my God, oh you're Moses Powell." I didn't even recognize him at first, and he was definitely a technician when it comes to the hand-to-hand combat aspects of martial arts. And if you look at a movie or a documentary that he was in called A Warrior Within, that I believe that was produced by Chuck Norris, it was about a show that was at the Felt Forum. Felt Forum back then was the smaller version of Madison Square Garden, which was all in the same building. I think it was the show called The World of Martial Arts or something. It was a huge, big demonstration of different styles on the main stage.
Yeah.
And he performed in that space. And it was amazing because he used to do rollouts by like literally holding himself basically on one finger for like maybe a second and then rolling out. It was amazing. And he's a big guy.
Yeah.
He's a super big guy. So it was great memories, great journey that I started out with. Yeah.
So cool. All right. What came next after that then?
So what came next is now what I've been training in and teaching in for the past 37 years is Kyokushinkai.
Okay.
And so the facility where the Sunukisru practitioners were training was on the ground floor. Upstairs was Kyokushin. And I didn't even know it. For the time that I spent there, I didn't know it.
Wow.
But until one day I came to class and their window was open and I kept hearing the sounds of Ki. And I was like, man, I didn't know there was a dojo upstairs. I said, well, I'm finished here. I'll go upstairs to check them out, see what they're all about. That moment that I went upstairs, I entered into the space. Of course, it's the old style tatami. Canvas tatami, tatami floors and wood everywhere. And I walk upstairs and I still hear the ringing of ki, but these guys were sparring. I sat down and I watched two guys spar. Nothing that I've ever seen before in any dojo. And they were sparring full contact and they were sparring with passion, like almost to the point like I was thinking to myself, do these guys like each other? They were sparring that hard. And watching that, and that was it for me. I was like, man, I gotta have this because this is, for me, it was martial arts in a real setting, in a dojo. You're training in that, under those real conditions. And so that was my beginning journeys in the Kyokushinkai Karate system. And from that, I kind of fell away from the Sunukis and really focused on Kyokushinkai.
before you got into that, did you do competition with any of the other instructors, or did that not start until you got in Kyokushinkai?
I
Okay.
did do some competition, even at that time, and I was pretty good. I was decent in sparring,
Mm-hmm.
but my thing was kata.
Okay.
I always loved kata. For some reason, the expression of performing different techniques was just something about that I really loved, and so I was really good in kata,
Okay.
and I was decent in sparring. Point sparring. It was pretty decent, but kata was definitely something that I really really enjoyed.
That's cool. Do you
So,
remember your very first tournament in any style?
let's see. I remember going to my first tournament in Taekwondo. Now, this is so I did say that I did not go to many tournaments when I was younger,
Yeah.
but one of my first tournaments was back then.
Okay.
And I remember going to the tournament, and I was so nervous. I
Yeah.
was so nervous because I grew up as a shy kid. Didn't have too many enemies, and almost on a nerdy type level. But I just remember doing my first kata, and I remember winning third place because I think a part of me loved that expression, and so when I actually performed the kata, and I don't even remember what kata I performed,
Mm-hmm.
but I just remember winning third place, and I was so proud.
That's
I was
cool.
so proud. But
Nice.
those are the experiences that you have when you are training martial arts at a young age,
Yeah.
and especially if the student is passionate about it. If the student is just there just for activity, blah blah blah, that's one thing. But when someone is really passionate about it, when you have those types of experiences, it's just a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
For me, it's just a wonderful thing.
Definitely. So then that first Kyokushinkai school, did you stay at that one until you moved out of New York?
Yes. So from the time that I was reintroduced back to Taekwondo, and these are my college years, I used to work in Brooklyn.
Okay.
So I used to work in Brooklyn. I did a lot of activities in Brooklyn, but yet I lived in Queens at that time. So what I used to do is after I get off work, I go train. So I tried to find a school that was in the proximity of me going home, so which was in Brooklyn. So a lot of times, so Tatamura, which was the instructor, his dojo was in Brooklyn, and so I worked in Brooklyn. So whenever I did not work for this said company again, I did not travel back to Brooklyn to go train. So I needed to find a Kyokushin dojo in Queens, which was a little bit closer to me. And I
Mm-hmm.
did. And that was Henryo, excellent instructor,
Okay.
Henryo. And that's where I stayed for a little while. Henryo and Shion Jacques Jadet, who is now my direct current instructor. And
Okay.
so that's where I really, really, really began to develop in the Kyokushin Karate is when I started training in Queens.
Okay. Yeah. You're actually thinking back my show. I've been doing the show a little over 3.5 years. You're the second Kyokushinkai student, if I remember correctly, from New York that I've interviewed on the show.
Yes. So
So
if you look at the map of Kyokushin, back in those days, New York City, New York State, Connecticut, that was basically, if you, in my opinion, was the headquarters of the Kyokushin because most, I won't say all, but I say most of the high-ranking instructors are from that area, that region.
okay.
California had theirs, yes.
Yeah.
Chicago had theirs, yes. But New York, whether it was upstate New York, New York City, or Connecticut, had a lot of the high-ranking instructors from that area.
Okay.
So if anybody who's in the spaces of Kyokushin and they are high-ranking black belts, excuse me, definitely for sure they are true Kyokushin for the U.S. in this country here. Because, like I said, all the premier instructors, all the Japanese instructors stem from that region.
Okay. Good to know.
Yes, so
Nice.
that's why, yeah.
Nice. All right. So then when did teaching become something that interested you? Did that happen in any of your previous martial arts, or did that not happen till Kyokushin? When did teaching become something that you were passionate about?
Yes, so teaching really became. I kind of. I think I was kind of forced into it. I think at the time I was going through some financial issues, and I was trying to figure out a way to make some extra money. And said to myself, "Well, let's just start teaching. That's something I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would mind doing that." And basically, I started teaching at a gymnastics school.
Okay.
I taught 2 to 3 classes a week, and that kind of sparked the teaching bug. I think it was already there.
Hmm.
I just needed a venue to kind of get that out.
Nice.
So started teaching at a gymnastics camp in Brooklyn, and it was all kids, and it was pretty good. It was a pretty sizable group. I mean, to some degree, that group was overwhelming at times, but
Yeah.
I did some teaching at that camp for about a year and a half, maybe 2 seasons there at that camp, and I kind of said to myself, like, if I'm doing it for someone else, I surely can do it for myself. And then I started branching out to teach on my own. I think my first teaching on my own outside of working for someone else was I set up a martial arts program at a dance school
Nice.
and was teaching there twice a week and very dedicated to it. And it was growing. Of course, a lot of kids, right?
Hmm.
And then from there, the goal for me was to get my own space
Okay.
because the 2 days for me wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to get out my teaching talents. And then
Okay.
I kind of felt that it wasn't enough for my students. And
Makes
so
sense.
at that moment, I started to seek a commercial space.
Okay.
And from there, it just exploded, at that
Nice.
moment.
And how long did you run your own space then?
So my own space, I
In
started
New York.
in New York City. Yes, just to make note, in New York City. I started in 2004, 2005
Okay.
in my own space. And I ran that school all the way to about 2010 or 11.
Okay.
And at that time, if you remember history, there was a recession
Yes.
that hit the country. And my dojo was in basically a low income neighborhood. And so the membership started to go down a bit. And parents
Yeah.
had to make that sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
He's either martial arts studies or food. I could not compete against that, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
But it was a very good run. It was a very, very good run,
Yeah.
So for me, my teaching style is we could produce, world champions. We can produce great fighters and stuff like that. But the thing is, when you're in a neighborhood like that, you want to help produce good citizens. So that was my goal. Like I wanted to take kids that were hanging out on the streets, and they were hanging out on the streets still back in the early 2000s, especially in that neighborhood,
Yeah.
and bring them in and give them a level of discipline and a level of belonging and run them in tournaments and give them something to look forward to every day. And that was definitely my goal in mind when I did my own thing in my own space.
So what was more nerve-wracking for you, competing in a tournament yourself at a young age or watching your students compete?
Definitely watching my students compete because
Nice.
you want the very best for them.
Yeah.
You want the very best for them. And sometimes the very best at the top of the list is the win, right?
Yeah.
But the win may not also be the thing that they need at that moment. Sometimes they just need to be a part of something and compete. And then they need the learning lesson. Even if I don't succeed first, second, third place, did you have a good time? Did you try your best? We'll come back again and do it again.
That's cool. What led to the decision to move to Dallas?
Wow. So back in 2010, closed the school. But I yet was still teaching, various places, and was the goal to reopen the school, but that didn't happen. So coming along back in 2015, I was working for the airlines, working for one particular airline, beautiful airline. I love the culture and everything, but I wanted something more. I wanted to move up in management. And so I was competing for different various positions within the airline that I work with, and nothing really was happening for me. So I kind of entertained the thought of going to another airline locally in New York.
Okay.
And that wasn't really happening as well. So I went to the next level and said, well, let me just entertain the thought in leaving New York City. If you know anything about some New Yorkers, that is the ultimate goal. I want to leave New York. I want to go to the South. They always want to do that.
Okay.
But they always find themselves in the rat wheel,
Yeah.
keep the hamster wheel, just keep going and going and going. Sometimes they move out. Sometimes they just never do. But so I entertained the thought in leaving New York, going to an airline outside of the New York City area. And I did a couple of interviews, and eventually I wasn't even thinking about Dallas, Texas. That wasn't even on my radar, but they had this position, this leadership position. And I said, well, let me try. So they called me in for an interview. They flew me in, interviewed a whole entire day, basically. And I left Dallas that day saying, okay, if they call me, I'll be happy. But if they call me and they offer me this dollar amount, and this is the dollar amount that I had in my head,
Mm-hmm.
I would take it. And 2 days later, they called me and said, hey, we're interested. And they said, give us another day and we'll come up with a compensation. And I said, okay, here it is. If they give me this number, I'm going to Dallas. And they exceeded that number.
Wow. That's
And in
awesome.
about 45 days, less than 50 days, I found myself in Dallas, Texas.
That's cool.
So, yes.
Nice.
So this is the reason why I came to Dallas.
Okay. And how long after you got to Dallas before you decided to open a new school down there?
So, coming to Dallas, my first thing was, okay, I wanted to do it, but I was unsure.
Mm-hmm.
So my second year here in Dallas, I decided to take the plunge. I said, okay, let me just start out small like I did in New York. I'll go to a dance school and say, hey, would you mind leasing space out for us? And, we just need 2 days a week just to start a kids class. And, that's how it all sparked. And then I kind of realized previous 2 years that there was very little that I haven't seen. Karate, traditional karate or taekwondo. There's not that. I didn't see any. I didn't see a lot. Like in New York, they're like everywhere, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then I come to Dallas, and then the flip side is there's a lot of MMA.
Yeah, a lot of
there's
jiu-jitsu.
a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu everywhere. And I was like, man, this is something that I can take and kind of make a market out of this. It's full contact karate. And I think I can do this. So I ended up teaching at a couple of dance schools and growing a small base. And that's how it all sparked. And so now we're going full speed ahead as our 2025 goals is to secure a building that we can like host classes like morning, noon, afternoon, night, every day.
Okay.
So that's our 2025 goal because we've been running this track now since 2018, 2019. I think it's time for us to kind of move to the next level.
Hopefully, good luck. Hopefully that'll happen. That's awesome.
Yes. Thank you.
I want you to think back to that very first class you taught in New York at that dance school or gymnastics school to now. Over all those years, what do you think has changed about your teaching style?
The one thing that has changed, it hasn't really changed much.
Okay, that's good.
I still focus on the student. And like I said before, for me, as I spent about 35, 36 years in Kyokushin, it's not about being a world champion for me. Mm-hmm. It's not about being the greatest fighter for me. It's about changing people. It's a people thing.
Yeah.
Because I often think about my days in New York and actually walking the streets in New York. And for me, in the 70s, 80s, learning how to defend yourself, it was a necessity. You needed to know how to defend yourself because New York was wild back then. And then coming to Dallas, Texas, 90% of the people don't walk the streets. It's not a walkable. We don't have walkable neighborhoods here.
Yeah.
Everything is drive to. We drive to school. We pick up the kids. The kids ride the bus, school bus. And so it's walkable. It's not, for me, the threat is not as high as it was when I was a kid.
Right.
13 years old, walking the streets of New York in the projects of New York. Anything can happen. So now for me, it's more about transforming people, helping them into better citizens. I have a student who came to me probably about 2 years ago. And this student, I can tell, very nice guy, very, very nice guy, very quiet guy. And everybody has a reason for coming to martial arts, right? Self-defense, fitness, self-improvement, blah, blah, blah. And so, like I said, again, back in the 70s, people who are going to self-defense, I almost could guarantee at least 80 to 90% of the time, they're there for self-defense.
Right.
Not even really fitness, but they're there for, hey, I need to know how to defend myself. Let me take some classes. But now you fast forward to 2025, I think, and I want to believe that most people, self-defense is on the list, yes.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times fitness is there. Right. Self-improvement is there. Being part of a community is there. So it's a lot more.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a lot more. So again, my teaching style has not changed much. It's still focused on the student and improving them and making them or helping them become or be a better citizen.
Nice. So being involved in Kyokushin, did you ever either want to, or did you ever go and do the 100-man kumite?
I am now 56 years old.
Yeah.
The thought of doing 100 men Commente is not in my future. I will tell you that right now.
Ever consider it when you were younger at all? Had a thought ever crossed your mind?
You know what? You know what? I did. I
Okay.
did. But you know what? A lot of things that we see on videos in Kyokushin could be very intimidating.
Yeah.
Now, as a 20-year-old, yeah, I kind of looked at it, and then I saw or watched some of the guys actually perform in the 100 man, and I'm like, nah, that's a dream, but I don't know.
I had to ask, you know.
Yes,
That's cool.
that's the dream. But let me tell you something. Those who compete, those who participate in the 100-man commentary, that's like wearing a crown in the community of Kyokushin.
Yeah.
And it is not easy at all. It's not easy to. When we perform our black belt tests, first, second, third, fourth, and up, it's almost like doing a piece of the 100-man commentary.
Oh, okay.
So in terms of when you are the final leg in the testing, let's say for a shodan or first degree, your fights have to be at minimum 10 to 15 fights, 1 minute rounds, back to back to back to back to back to back. So it's almost like getting a piece of that. So I just read somewhere in the community of Kyokushin, someone did, I think it was either last year or earlier this year, someone did a 50-man commitment.
Yep, I've heard about that.
Yeah, they do 50-man commitments. And as a matter of fact, I know a young lady that actually from New York, she actually performed a 50-person commitment.
Nice.
Her name is Shian Michelle Gay.
Okay.
And she's outstanding. You need to check her out.
Nice.
She's doing it big in the knockdown or the Kyokushin or karate community.
Nice. I'll have to look into that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, it's been going on for, since the early 60s is when Masuyama started it, and only 32 people have ever done it. So that tells you something right there.
Exactly. But there's modern day people who today's 21st century, 20th century that had performed it. One of my colleagues is Sian Daniel from the World Kyokushin Budokai. He performed the 100-man commitment.
Nice.
Within the last 5 years, 6 years, or something like that.
Okay.
So,
I don't know if this website I'm looking at is correct. So the last person to do it was in 2021. So
okay, So there are people who are stepping up. There are people who are stepping up to the plate and actually doing it. But once completed, that puts them on another level. That puts them on the level. Okay.
So what made you want to start writing for Martial Journal? I saw you're one of their contributors on there.
Yes. So, again, as I began to build a brand, right, Dallas Kyokushin, and not only Dallas Kyokushin, but as I build a brand as simply Duval, I had a conversation with this one high-ranking instructor. He's not Kyokushin, but this is a guy who came from the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu space. And he told me this one thing. He says, you have to, when you get to a certain age or certain level in teaching, you want to kind of, to solidify your legacy, you want to kind of build in other ways, right?
Yeah.
Your students are going to be your best representation of you. Right. But then there are other ways. And so I decided to say, hey, I want to write and talk about things pertaining to Kyokushin. Because Kyokushin in the US, though people know about it, it is a very small community here.
Right.
And it's just I'm just a little bit confused by that, but it is a small community here. So I want to be part of it's a small community. I want to be part of the people that are on top, that's talking about it, that's becoming an authority, that's people that's thinking about things of Kyokushin, right? Not just kicks and punches and stuff like that. I want to think about why we do this kata, or why do we train so hard, and why do we say this, and why do we do that? So I wanted to start expanding myself in those spaces. So this is why I started with the martial arts journal, and they've been so gracious to allow me to post up every now and again some things, and I'm so grateful in that.
That is cool. See, I'm actually signed up as a writer on there. I just haven't actually done one yet. I warned him. I said, I'll gladly do this, but just a warning with my podcast, I have very little free time. So he's like, oh no,
Yes.
whenever you can, whenever you can. I'm like,
Yes.
okay, as long as you're willing to be patient, I'll sign up and hopefully I'll actually do something. So we'll see.
Right. It's very good. I mean, because a lot of the stuff that you probably could write about is probably 90% of the stuff that you think about all day,
Yeah.
or most of the day.
Exactly.
Right. So, journal, take your little journal with you and just jot down things. And then when you're ready to piece it together, you piece it together and produce some work.
I need to start doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm also
Yes.
currently, I started writing a book, which I'm way early stages, like 10, 15 pages into it. And I also just like today, I'm like, I just have an idea for a second book. I'm like, wait a second. I haven't even nowhere near finishing the first book. So like we'll push that second idea away for now.
Yeah. It's, I mean, sometimes these ideas just come to you at moments.
Yes, exactly.
And then you just jot them down because sometimes they'll come to you, and sometimes they come to you very detailed and vivid.
Yes.
And so that's the moment when you have to begin to write these things down, because sometimes life will take you all over the place, and then things will begin to get a little foggy.
Yep, that is true.
So yeah, without a doubt.
So in all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy that is at the top of your list?
Yeah, one philosophy I definitely could take hold to is that it really is not, you're never too old to join a martial arts school.
Yes.
And never too old. I mean, in my dojo, what I try to do is I push my students, right? I push them to the max. But if you are of a certain age or level of fitness or whatnot, don't worry about it. We'll get to that. We'll get you there.
Yeah.
We'll get you there. And another key thing for me, consistency. You have to be consistent.
Yes.
You have to keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Just keep going. Tell students all the time, hey, we're running 5 days a week now. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to train 5 days a week.
Right.
But if you're consistent with at least 2, you're good. Add another day, better. If you add 5 days for 1 week, great. I mean, you don't have to stay in that space, right? Because everybody has a career, everybody has families, right? Yeah. So, but to just be consistent. Just be consistent. If it's just 1 day a week, and because you can't train because life has gotten you all whipped around, good. Just stay consistent. Because one thing that I found out that when I was younger, being young, you don't realize these things, but there's lessons in life, right? Is that when you follow, like in my particular case, when I fell away from martial arts and then I had to return back, it's almost like, oh man, why did I fall away for 2 years? Why did I fall away for 3 years? So it's almost like that reset. You got to start again and work your way back, So yeah, definitely. You're never too old, and consistent. Just being consistent. Just staying in the loop.
Cool. I like that. No, and I tell a lot of people, my mom actually joined in her 40s and got her black belt. So
What?
Yeah.
That is awesome, man. That is awesome.
Never too old. I like that. And the funny story is the whole reason she did it, I tried to get her to do it for like a year, and she kept saying she was too old. And she came, we did a demonstration, and I got her to come watch our demonstration that our school was doing. And that we had a lady in class, Miss Edith, who was a red belt, and she was 73 years old. And my mom said, if she can do it, I can do it. And she joined the next day. So
Right. See, so what happens for me when seniors are joining the class, self-defense is not really on top of their list, right?
Yeah.
I think I want to believe self-defense is not on top of their list. I honestly believe that they're doing it for health reasons, right?
Yes.
To get some type of movement, but then they're doing it for life. It makes them feel good.
Yep.
It makes them feel good when they go in spaces with their peers and say, hey, I just took a karate class. I'm involved in karate. What belt are you? Black belt. Oh my God, are you really? You see?
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah. So it helps. It is martial arts, and I think we're just now scratching the surface on it. It's one of those activities that you could do it at any age, any disability, you see, and it's not seasonal. It continuously go on all year long, right? Not like baseball, basketball, football, and it's all positive.
Yeah.
On the outside, it doesn't look positive, right? Because you're sparring, you're punching, and you're kicking. But at the end of the day, it's like 100% positive. There's nothing really negative about it. People bring in the negativity.
Yes.
But if you put martial arts as a clump of clay on a wheel, on the outside, it looks weird, right? But when you start shaping and molding, you begin to understand a lot of things. And this is why, again, the longer you stay in martial arts, you begin to look at things differently. It's not about fighting anymore. It's about elevating yourself.
Right. No, I agree completely. All right. How about a worst martial arts related injury?
Oh my goodness. The worst one I've ever received, well, close to the worst, is breaking my fist trying to break some boards that were the stand was just too close to the ground. And as I broke through the boards, I ended up smashing down to the ground as well.
Ouch.
That's the worst injury that I've ever had. And, when you break bones, you live with that forever.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because now arthritis set in and, swelling and stuff like that. So you kind of live with that forever. But many times I've broken my toe and didn't know it.
Yeah.
Just kind of felt like, hey, why does my foot keep hurting? And then all of a sudden I look down, my toe is just kind of twisted in the other direction. What happened?
Nice. Been there a few times. So.
Yeah. As far as any worse injuries than that, no, I haven't had any too bad of injuries.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So what are your thoughts on something like MMA, the UFC? Is that something you're a fan of?
Man, I tell you, I was just thinking about this the other day. I'm a fan of MMA. Okay. I'm a fan of the sport. Yeah. And I just have to make that clear.
Yes.
I have seen the world of MMA gone from 0 to 100 over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And I don't want to offend anybody when it comes to these combat sports, but I think what happens is the sport itself is great. But then when we begin to introduce, people bring their issues and their negativity to the sport.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. So my biggest criticism now is karate combat, right? So I love the idea. Karate combat is almost like a full contact karate situation. And then they add some throws and stuff like that. But now the level of where it's going, I can see where it's going. It's kind of going a little bit to the left now, because now they have submission portion to the karate combat.
Yeah.
And then I have my own personal opinions about that. And then for me, if I think in terms of what K1 used to be back in the day, it was a very serious thing. Versus karate combat, now we have the clowning around, we have the coins, since when do we need gimmicks to sell something?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm just too old school,
I agree though.
If you're going to present karate as martial art, present it as a martial art. I don't need cotton candy and popcorn to gain an audience. And maybe that's what's needed when you're trying to present it on a world stage, television, and things of this nature, right?
Yeah.
But that's really my opinion. I like the sport. I kind of like some production of it, the entertainment, like the boxing, how they have the champions and belts and stuff like that. But then when you start entering into like, let's have for a perfect example, I saw an event where they had the promoter of the event fight a female from Brazil. Now this female, she's super tall, super big, and they had to fight. Well, this is BJJ spaces.
Yeah.
So grapple. They had to grapple.
Yep.
And I kind of thought that was like a gimmick, a little gimmickish.
Yeah.
I don't like the gimmicks. It is what it is.
I would agree.
And this is why I think that the karate spaces have fallen off. Right. Because of course you had the introduction of BJJ. They had great production, television, everybody's watching it, blah, blah, blah. And then karate kind of falls in the background. Then you have things like Cobra Kai, which misrepresents karate, right? And then people will latch onto that. So now when you talk about karate, they default to Cobra Kai. So I have my mixed opinions on it. Like I said, I like the sport. I like to watch it. But then when they start introducing the antics and the popcorn and cotton candy just to get you to watch and like it, that's where I don't like it all.
I completely agree with you. So, all right. So I have a few fun questions we use to wrap up the show. talked a little bit about MMA. So let's say you decided you were going to step into the octagon. What music would be playing as you took your walk in? What's your walk-up song going to be?
I am a product of the early hip hop
Nice.
era, and I'm from New York, right? It's like everybody from New York, they love hip hop, right?
Yep.
So would it definitely have to be a hip hop song? Man, I can't think of one offhand, but it's something that in that realm, in that hip hop,
like a Run DMC,
maybe
something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna mention some Run DMC, you know,
Nice.
the early Run DMC, you know.
Hey, Raising Hell, greatest rap album ever recorded, in my opinion. Love it.
One of them, yes, definitely for sure. One of them for sure.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. Now this one, it doesn't have to be 4. It can be as few as 2 and as many as 8, but just 3, 4, 5 names you would have put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts.
Oh my God. Well, number 1 definitely would have to be Sosai Masayama.
Nice.
Has to be. He has to be number 1. Number 2, definitely Bruce Lee, because his movies inspired me.
Nice.
So he would definitely have to be there. I would say, wow, I'm trying to think of a modern day master. I would say, I can't think of, but I would, any instructor that changed the world.
Nice.
World change. I call them world changers that changed the world. So definitely a man by the name of Sosai Oyama who changed the world. He changed the entire world. You know, Funakoshi, another changed the world. Right, changed the world. Even after his death, years and years, still his name is circulating. Right.
Yep.
The founder of judo. Right. The founder of judo.
Yep.
Changed the world. Exactly. The founder of Aikido changed the world. These people changed the world. Right. And then if we talk about modern day, this one name many people may not know, but he probably, I would say that he is definitely an influence in how my teaching style. A gentleman by the name of Fred Hamilton.
Oh, yes.
New York.
Okay.
Harlem in New York.
Yep, I've heard of
him. Not related, but I've gotten a lot of calls asking me if I'm related to him, but I'm not sure if I'm related to him. I do have family that live there with the Hamilton name, but I'm not sure. But Fred Hamilton, super. I mean, as I read his history and I watch videos, I mean, to grow a dojo in Harlem back in the 70s, 60s, 70s. And I watched how he trained his students. They were super serious about martial arts. And I'm talking about kids. Yeah. It's hard to get kids to be super serious about anything, right?
Yep.
But I watched him train a kids class, teach a kids class, and it was unbelievable. So definitely Fred Hamilton would be on my Mount Rushmore.
Nice. I like it. All right. How about a favorite martial arts book?
Right now, since I'm in the Kyokushin space, this book that this Shion Fernando Perez produced called Kyokushin, Evolution Without Forgetting Tradition. It is a very good book, and I've used this book as almost like a student manual or as a starter book for my students.
Okay.
I tell them to purchase the book. It gives a lot of detailed information about the style and what we do in Kyokushin. So Kyokushin is a great, like a student manual.
Okay, cool.
And of course, Oyama's books produced, and then books produced by Shion Cameron Kwon. Okay. It would probably be the top of the list for me because he was a interpreter and assistant to Sosai Oyama, who traveled with him around the world and gather up information and the reasons why. It's very, very, very good stuff that he produced. He does a podcast every Wednesday or Tuesday sometime.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Now this one you may or may not have an answer for. We're close to the same age, so you might, but do you have a favorite martial arts video game? Did you ever get into gaming?
A little bit. I was a little bit into gaming. You know, growing up, I couldn't have a gaming system because, my parents were like, a gaming system? What is that? I can't afford that. I'm not getting that. I don't know. I don't remember playing a game at my friend's house, but I can't remember. I think it was Tekken at the time.
I love Tekken.
I think it was Tekken at the time.
Okay.
The early versions of Tekken.
Yep. Yeah, that'd have been early 90s, I believe, when Tekken came out. So
yes.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Coming up as a kid, Green Hornet.
Nice. I like it. I have the whole series on DVD, so I love it.
The Green Hornet. It used to be Kung Fu.
Yep.
But as I beginning to train, at that time as I was beginning to train, I kind of thought it was kind of weird because he didn't really do anything technical.
No.
He just did like one chop, two chop, and a throw.
Yeah.
But the Green Hornet, Bruce Lee, right? Yeah. He was really working it.
Yeah,
you know?
that's cool.
Yes.
Yeah. No, they're making I've been telling a few of my guests this. They announced about a month ago they're making a movie version of Kung Fu starring Donnie Yen.
Really?
Kind of excited for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that could be good. So, how about a favorite martial arts movie?
By far, Into the Dragon.
Nice.
Into the Dragon. I can watch that movie like 2 times in a weekend.
So did you go when they re-released it in theaters last summer? Did you go for the 50th anniversary?
I did not go to the 50th anniversary. I don't know if they even have it. I don't even remember seeing it in the DFW area, which they probably had, but I didn't notice it. But definitely Into the Dragon. Okay. It is by far my favorite martial arts movie.
Nice. That was the first time I ever saw it on the big screen was last summer. So I was kind of excited to go see that at the movie theater. So I had probably seen it 100 times before that, but never on the big screen. Yeah.
So. But a different experience when you see it on the big screen.
Definitely. Right? Yeah. And my 20-year-old son came with me and he loved it. So it was good.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
All right. Final question. Any movie you've ever seen, favorite movie fight scene?
It's got to be go back to Into the Dragon.
Nice.
The fight scenes when they were in the mirrored room.
Oh, I love that.
Unbelievable.
So much.
Unbelievable. So great. A second fight scene would be, I believe it was the Chinese Connection when Bruce Lee fought the Russian guy.
Yep.
Was that Chinese Connection? When he fought the Russian guy in the little field and he did the slow motion movement like a butterfly type of thing?
I think so. It's been a while since
I think it was a Chinese Connection. We'll have to research that, but that was one of my favorite scenes. Like the Russian guy was getting the best of him.
Yeah.
And then Bruce Lee stood back and he did this circular movement, and I remember them advertising it, and they said, "Come watch Bruce Lee do the butterfly something."
Nice.
And because they had the little special effects with his hands continuously going around, it kind of did look like a butterfly, you know?
Yeah.
And that was my favorite scene. But definitely the mirror scene in Into the Dragon. If I can add one more.
Yeah.
The fight scene when I think it was Bob Wall when he was getting ready to fight Bruce Lee, and he grabbed the board and he smashed it. And Bruce Lee was like, "Boards, don't hit back." Favorite scenes.
So good, nice, cool. Well, Duval, before I let you go, is there anything I forgot to ask you, or you want to be sure we get out there before we wrap it up?
Oh, I just want to make mention that we are here in the DFW area, that's Dallas Fort Worth. We are training in the Farmers Branch area specifically. We're training 5 days a week. So if you want any information about Kyokushinkai Karate, full contact karate, join us. Reach out to me, do DallasKyokushin.com. It's DallasKyokushin.com.
Okay.
And we can answer any questions and get you signed up. Classes.
And I will put a link out there when the episode comes out too, so to make sure people can get that.
Yes, thank you so much.
And if you have any black belts that want to move to the Fargo Moorhead area and open a school, I'd love to train in it. we have no schools. If they got to be able to take the cold, but we have. Trust me, I've looked. That's one style I've always wanted to learn that style, but there's never been one anywhere near me. So unfortunately,
yeah, but we're definitely open to seminars too if need be. So reach out if anybody. Yes. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Yes, sir.
Cool.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I love your story. I truly appreciate it. And hopefully we can meet in person someday.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on this show. It's a great show. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.